Let's continue to find some values in the trade market on some players who have struggled recently and maybe even an all-star who is still being undervalued. That's right, I think that the major league leader in strikeouts for pitching, Garrett Crochet, is still underrated, and I'll tell you why. Now you'll see a theme here. I love going after aces who are coming off of bad starts or at least haven't been at their best recently. That's the time to try to take advantage of an owner who's maybe a little skeptical. I just feel like with Crochet, though, all season, it's like people aren't buying into this. I get it. It's his first year as a starter. I get that he's on the White Sox, and I think that's a large part of it, right? This perception. And some people are worried about whether his arm will hold up, the innings restrictions, whatever. At one point, do we just say it doesn't matter? This guy's dominating. Let's go out and try to get him on our team if possible. The feeling I get is that he is available in trade talks if you're willing to part with something that's comparable, which is only fair, but I would love to have Crochet on my fantasy team because his value in fantasy is only going to go up because we know there's a really good chance he gets moved. Apparently, every team in the majors is interested in him, and that makes sense. And so if he finds himself on a contender like the Dodgers, the Orioles, something like that, he's just going to get more wins and his value, again, just gets greater. So this is really the last chance to get him at what I think is the best possible time. Now, I will say back in the preseason, what I called one of my favorite starting pitching sleepers, I didn't foresee this kind of season. But hey, now that it's happening, again, I've been buying into him since the season started. You need to also. This is legit. The strikeout numbers reflect it. The ERA, the whip. And that's mainly because he has one of the best fastballs in the game. You can see that run value is sky high. I mean, he's dominating with his fastball. That's really one of the key markers you want to look for in a pitcher. The fastball is going to be a pitch that, for the most part, you need to rely on as any type of pitcher. And so if you can blow hitters away and locate your fastball well, which he's doing, then everything else will fall into place. And his last start was disappointing, but it wasn't even that bad. It's just he gave up a couple of runs in only 4 innings versus the Marlins. Oh well. But again, I feel like that's enough and people are starting to wonder, is this the end? Is he going to... No, just forget all that. Look, if anything, his next 2 starts, he gets the Pirates, he gets the Royals. He'll be totally fine. And then again, if he goes to a team, that increases his chances for wins even better. And again, I know some of you will say, who would be selling Garrett Crochet right now? I guarantee you there's somebody out there who thinks they're clever and they're going to sell high on him right now. And, I just don't see that. Now, on the other hand, Pablo Lopez. Talked about him before, both in the panic video and as a buy low. So here we go again, coming off another bad start. And this last start was legitimately a bad start. He allowed 6 earned runs on 8 hits in just 5 innings against the Astros. Now that ERA for the season is up to 5.18. It's not at all what you expected from a guy that you drafted as your ace, most likely. Now, if you're eagle-eyed, you might have noticed on that previous graphic with Crochet, we're talking about the best fastballs in the game. Pablo Lopez was still up there, top 10. The fastball is working, and the strikeouts, also there. He's 11th in the majors in strikeouts. So on the one hand, you feel like he's doing a lot of what he did last year. He still looks like a great pitcher, except when you look at all the non-fastball pitches, both the breaking and the off-speed pitches have not been effective at all. The big thing I noticed with Lopez is his fly ball rate has jumped up quite a bit. He's never really been a fly ball pitcher, but this year that mark is up to 29%. We've seen it's climbed now last year as well. And again, last year he was lights out, really became a certified ace in Minnesota, but it seems to be trending upward for whatever reason. His sinker just isn't really that good. He should probably ditch it at some point. But even on all the other stuff, he's allowing more fly balls, and that's why he's getting into trouble. He's allowed 17 home runs on the season, and that's where a lot of the damage has come. So the question is, will he straighten this out this year? I mean, certainly he can. This seems fixable. He's already started to throw his fastball more often than last year, probably because he realizes, hey, that's my best pitch, and the other stuff isn't working as well. So that's a good sign. I mean, keeping the ball a little bit lower in the zone, that's definitely doable. I also am encouraged, although I know that X stats aren't everything, but there's a huge gap here. His actual ERA, his expected ERA is almost 2 runs lower, 3.37 on the xERA. That means he deserves better outcomes than he's gotten. I know I said this about a month ago, and it really hasn't happened, But with Lopez, it's like he's good and he's really good, and then one of these starts comes along. I mean, if he can just eliminate those disastrous starts, again, easier said than done, easy for me to say, but I'm still buying into Lopez. He's still helping you a lot with the strikeouts and get you wins. I think the ERA will level off a bit. And a guy who's pitched like an ace, and honestly, if not for the fact that he just came off a little bump in the road and had a back issue that forced him to miss a start, Jack Flaherty actually was in the conversation legitimately for AL Cy Young, up there with guys like Crochet. I've talked about it before. His control has been immaculate. It's almost amazing. A 33% strikeout rate and only a 4% walk rate. You just don't see that very often. On the year, he's got a 3.24 ERA and a whip of an even 1. He's got a ton of strikeouts. He's up there among the league leaders in that category, despite missing a start. But I think this is a good time to strike a deal to try to get Flaherty because, again, it's not like it was horrible, but his last start gave up 5 runs in just 5 2/3 innings, also because of 3 home runs. And those back issues might worry some people. Now, it could possibly worry you too, and I get that. He's had issues throughout his career. That's why Flaherty at times has looked dominant, but has never really been a consistent performer. So I can't say there's zero risk here, right? But at the same time, if he continues to pitch the way he has, as long as he stays healthy, I mean, you have yourself an ace here, basically. While this is a great time to try to get a discount on an ace, some of the guys I've already talked about, let's try an ace closer, or at least a guy who has been a dominant closer but hasn't pitched this year. That's Devin Williams of the Brewers. We probably forgot about him because he hasn't pitched with that injury. Really bad timing because a lot of people drafted him just to see him go on the shelf. Well, he's getting closer to return. It won't be till after the All-Star break, but then we'll see him back. Now, here's the thing. You think, how am I going to get a discount on a guy who was basically the top closer in the game last year? 1.53 ERA, 0.92 whip, a ton of strikeouts, a guy who's proven he's on a good team. I mean, why would somebody give up Williams for less than he's worth? Because he hasn't pitched all year. People don't want to admit it, but they have that concern in the back of their mind. Is he going to be fully healthy? And some people, believe it or not, might actually think, but Trevor McGill's been so good. What if they just keep him as the closer? Look, this goes for all situations. Whoever has the player you're trying to get, you don't know what they're thinking until you ask, right? If the guy who's got Devin Williams has been stashing him all year just doesn't want to part with him, then fine. You move on and forget I said any of this. But it's worth trying because you'd be surprised sometimes. And I do think whether it's Williams or another closer who's maybe in a little bit of a slump or something, it's a good time to try to secure an actual closer you feel secure about, because we're going to see a lot of guys shift and move here at the trade deadline. Some of these guys who've racked up saves throughout the season, like Kyle Finnegan, are about to get moved, and they may not be getting many saves the rest of the way, depending on where they land. So while I always want to sell high on closers in shaky situations, I also want to try to do the opposite. Maybe you pay up a little bit more to try to lock down somebody who you know is going to be the man the rest of the way. All right, let's get some hitters in here. Last week, talked about an Oriole who could be jumping ship to a new team. Cedric Mullins could be wearing out his welcome finally in Baltimore. But there might be some other pieces on the move because there are teams who are looking for an extra bat with some power. Maybe a guy like Ryan Mountcastle is available. Look, the Orioles clearly have a surplus of offensive talent, and they could part with some to make room for some of their young players. And this isn't just speculation. You might notice that Mountcastle has been losing playing time lately. Again, there's just so many pieces here. Heston Kjerstad, an outfielder, but also been playing some first base, could slot in there. Very similar, just on the left-handed side to Mountcastle. And they might decide they're fine with what they've got. So now the question is this an upgrade? Do we really want Mountcastle if he's going out of that Baltimore offense somewhere else to a non-contender? Well, that depends. Obviously, it depends on the situation and where he goes, but increased playing time is always good. Maybe some increased motivation also helps. So Mountcastle is a guy who's got some power. Remember, there was some talk a couple of years ago about when they did adjust the left field fence there in Baltimore. Not good for right-handed power hitters, and sure enough, it did eat into his power a little bit. So it's possible he winds up in a situation that is actually favorable. Now, Mountcastle has been slumping lately, which is part of the reason he's losing some playing time and at-bats. Only 150 so far in July, hit 248 in June. Still showing some power, though, and the reason I believe him is because his expected stats are actually pretty good. So I do feel like there's still plenty of thump there. He's a guy who's still at a prime age. I would be trading for him and counting on him to be my everyday first baseman in fantasy or outfielder. Again, this is more of like a bench stash, a surplus hitter that could give you a boost. And then let's go back to the White Sox. Look, guy who did have a pretty good June was Andrew Vaughn, and his July he's cooled down a little bit, but he's still going to be in demand possibly because the White Sox, we know, are willing to move anything and everything for the most part. And Vaughn is a guy who you just feel has never quite scratched the surface of his potential until what we've seen recently. Again, that June, if you don't remember, he hit 337 with 6 home runs and 20 RBIs. He was one of the hottest hitters in the bigs. And there are plenty of teams who could use a power bat like him. And what if the Astros are one of them? Now, I'm throwing that out there. It's possible. I don't know if it'll happen. But look, they've been linked to Christian Walker. What if the Diamondbacks are still in it and they don't want to part with Christian Walker? The Astros are going to have to look somewhere else. Maybe there's another team here who just wants to throw Vaughn at DH. And even though you look at Vaughn, you say, well, he just had that one good month, so what? Maybe it was just a hot streak. But overall in the season, he's actually put up pretty good expected slugging stats. In fact, he's underachieved on that X slugging rate by 60 points. There's plenty of thump there. Just feel like maybe the situation, a change here, might do him some good. We don't know exactly what's going to happen before the trade deadline. That's why you got to keep it locked here. Try to make those smart waiver wire pickups and those smart stashes. Speaking of that, I hope you did what I said. Beat the breakout and grab guys like Rhys Hines, Yilbert Diaz before everybody else is all over him. That video is right here.